My friends, it's time for some Mario Party 2 facts, knowledge, and lore that you almost certainly didn't need to know, and hopefully do not know. Like, what is the shortest game of Mario Party 2 ever played? Or what about the longest? It seems many people never knew of this road leading up to the Horror Land course, let alone what happens to it at night. Or what about this hidden reference to Dory on another Mario Party 2 board? Indeed, crank up that useless and obscure meter, because today we're exploring some strange and unusual Mario Party 2 facts.
Here we go!
What's the fastest game of Mario Party 2 that could possibly be played? Now, I don't know about you, but growing up, I played all of 20, 35, and 50 turn games. I know a lot of people never played those 50 turners, and they could be really epic, but they were quite daunting, so many folks never played a single one, foregoing such an epic ordeal. Generally speaking, it seemed games took about 3 minutes per turn on average. So a typical 20-turn game took roughly 1 hour, a 35-turn game took a little over an hour and a half, and a 50-turn game took 150 minutes, or 2.5 hours. That is indeed daunting for a video game, but I played through these many times. I also know that a lot of people didn't know that Mario Party 2, and 1 for that matter, had a feature where you could save a board game after every turn and come back to finish it later. You know, it's literally an in-game menu option in the pause menu, but yeah, I know tons of people never did this, and maybe that's why they never played 50-turn games. But anyways, 20-turn games were pretty standard, and 1 hour for those 20 turns is pretty standard. But how about this? There is a ridiculous tool-assisted speedrun or superplay by Icy Speedruns in which he plays an entire game of Western Land in only 21 minutes. He does this by intentionally rolling low every turn, like every player getting a 1 on most of the first few turns, and then making sure that the minigame is always a 4-player game where everyone can lose instantly. Now, this gets pretty repetitive after a couple of turns, and it results in some pretty unusual scenarios and rarely seen draws in minigames where you would quite literally have to be trying to lose early. I know, the whole thing is an extremely silly exercise, but it is pretty funny. A little bit of strategizing has to be done in the last few turns and at various points in the game to avoid landing on, say, battle games, or avoid landing on the same spot as someone else, which would trigger a duel game, thus losing time. In-game events are kept to a bare minimum, and at the end, Yoshi wins with just slightly more coins than the rest of his opponents. Honestly, one of the most hilarious, silly, and trite TASs I've ever watched. But what's the counter to this? The longest game ever played? Well, you could just sit there and pause and leave the game on for days, and, it's kind of hard to define the longest game possible. And so we don't really have any solid evidence of a longest ever Mario Party 2 game. But there is a sort of urban legend that touches on this context. At various gaming meets throughout the years, in particular some gaming meets taking place in the Midwest like Minnesota, or Middle America, like the infamous and legendary meets at a Virginia lake house between GoldenEye and Mario Kart players throughout the late 2000s and early 2010s. There was a sort of unspoken rule that if you landed on 2 specific minigames, you would put the controllers down, resulting in a tie. Because these 2 minigames just took way too long to play out when you had competent, skilled N64 gamers going at it. These games were Shy Guy Says and Hot Rope Jump. These guys were so good at Mario Party 2 that they could just play for what felt like hours and hours, never losing, really putting a hamper on the games. The sort of urban legend stories tell of hot rope jump games extending over 45 minutes of 2 or more players refusing to give up, which would obviously, not be the most fun thing when you're trying to get through a 20 or 35 or 50 turn game, and this is just one minigame. Now, hot rope jump is one thing, and frankly, many decent gamers could go a pretty long time, getting hundreds if not thousands of jumps in the game. You simply have to press A with good timing as the rope speeds up or slows down. But Shy Guy Says is another thing entirely. These same sorts of legends tell of players being able to go indefinitely in Shy Guy Says, which is pretty remarkable when you consider how much Shy Guy tries to trick you when he raises the A or B flag. And no, it's a common misconception that the speed at which Lakitu passes over your head during a game indicates whether or not Shy Guy will attempt a trick. This just isn't true, and this Lakitu speed is just completely random. So to go dozens, if not hundreds of rounds of Shy Guy Says without a single mistake, that's pretty impressive. And according to the local folklore, these gamers could go pretty much forever, to the point where they just decided, enough's enough. In order to get through a full game of Mario Party 2, or just put your controllers down and lose immediately for a draw so we can carry on to the next game. But are these legends true? Well, here's the thing. Hot Rope Jump in Mario Party 2 displays a counter that goes to 99. Now, you can keep going to well after 99, a pretty simple exercise if you just use two controllers and go to the minigame island area and play yourself. But the game continues counting internally well after 99, all the way up to 1000. On the 1000th jump, the game freezes. Now, there is video footage of this from a gamer named Silo Simon, who took about 17 minutes to reach 1000 jumps and get the freeze.
There it is, I got it! I got the soft lock, guys, yes! I've proved that it's real! Yes! I did it!
So this somewhat debunks the hours upon hours of hot rope jump games being played. At longest, they would go 17 minutes. And, I can kind of understand how a 17-minute hot rope jump game could feel like forever in the context of a bunch of dudes hanging out and playing a Mario Party 2 game. So while it can't quite go 45 minutes or an hour, it can go quite a long time. Not to mention, if the game freezes at the end of 1000 jumps, well, obviously this would not be good. You'd have to reset and actually start the whole turn over, because the saving mechanism only saves after every turn. And if you didn't have it on, well, the game would freeze and you'd have to start again. So, hot rope jump can end, but can Shy Guy Says? Well, this hasn't been tested as extensively because the game is a lot more difficult. Picking A or B correctly is a lot harder than just jumping with the good timing. So it's not really known if Shy Guy Says can continue for 17 minutes or 1000 correct selections or whatever. It would probably take more than 17 minutes to go 1000 correct selections, since it seems like Shy Guy's A-B pushing takes longer than jumping over the rope. But hey, hopefully this video might incentivize someone to tool-assisted play such a result in this game. Can Shy Guy Says be locked and frozen with too many correct answers? Anyways, the point is, hot rope jump cannot go forever. It can go to 1000 jumps, which is 17 minutes, which might feel like a very long time, but it's definitely not forever. Now, in theory, let's say you got hot rope jump every single turn in a 50-turn game. That would be pretty crazy, and let's say you went 999 jumps each time, one short of the game freezing, which would still take about 17 minutes, and you add this all together over 50 turns, the game would end up being 850 minutes or nearly 14 hours long. Add in a bunch of board shenanigans, and it's very easy to see a Mario Party 2 game going well over 15, if not 20, maybe even 24 hours. The 24-hour Mario Party 2 game, well, that would be a remarkable TAS or just gameplay altogether. Perhaps something around 15 to 24 hours is the longest theoretically possible Mario Party 2 game. And yeah, if you're curious and to jog your memory, in Mario Party 1, hot rope jump ends after only 20 turns, with all remaining players winning the coins. And in Mario Party Superstars for the Nintendo Switch, there's a whole function where you can get up to 10,000 jumps as a sort of proof of concept minigame to challenge yourself, so that is pretty cool as well. Mario Party 2's boards are known for some of their remarkable detail and interesting Easter eggs, which sometimes go without much appreciation. For example, all of the boards have this Goomba house structure located somewhere within them. It serves no purpose and is just decoration. I can imagine pondering as a kid playing the game, what if there's some kind of secret mode where you could unlock and talk to these Goomba houses, the Goomba living there for some extra board function. And these sorts of details and mysteries just add to the wonder and fantasy of these games, especially back in the day where not everything was cracked and decompiled and solved. Mysteryland is perhaps the most finely detailed and Easter egged board, so let's check out all the hidden references, especially to things in the sort of mystery, conspiracy, paranormal realm, and boy, there are many. Starting out with the obvious, in the top right quadrant of the map, we have what appears to be a Mario-style version of Stonehenge, with these large monoliths assembled in a way familiar to anyone who has pondered the mysteries of Stonehenge. And likewise, just above we have the giant stone heads of Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, another remarkable location of historical intrigue, with it sort of being uncertain exactly how, or especially why, these giant heads were created on a remote island in the South Pacific Ocean. In the bottom left quadrant, we have what appears to be a reference to the Nazca Lines, famous geoglyphs made in the Nazca Desert in Peru, often depicting various animals native to the region, which are mysterious for the way in which they can only be seen from far above into the sky. Presumably an angle that we were not able to see from, flying in flying machines in the sky at the time the Nazca Lines were created several thousand years ago. And so again, it's really quite a mystery as to exactly why the ancient inhabitants of this area made these lines. In the case of Mario Party 2, the Nazca line variation seems to depict Blooper, the squid from the Mario franchise, though he actually went by the name Bloober at the time of the game's release. As we know from, in Mario Party 3, he has a whole course, Deep Bloober Sea. Strewn throughout the course are these strange spherical rocks, which seem to be a reference to the mysterious petrospheres, or stone spheres of Costa Rica, which have been considered impressive because of uncertainty as to exactly how the ancient Costa Ricans were able to make them so finely and smoothly. We also see a crop circle on the right edge of the board, of course long considered mysterious shapes and circles that form in various crop fields throughout the world, especially, the farmer wakes up one day and they're just there without being there yesterday. Some have attributed these to UFO sightings, or force fields and ley lines deep within the earth, or some interdimensional aspect and force, while others have come forward to claim that they just created these intricate designs on a random farmer's field for fun or as a hoax, even though this is quite damaging and costly to the poor farmer whose field it happens upon. Either way, crop circles have long endured as mysterious and unusual phenomenon in this realm regardless. Interestingly, just below the crop circles we see a crashed plane. Now, while this might seem a little less unusual or paranormal than the other tidbits featured, crashed planes do have a long history in the sort of mystery realm, adjacent to things like conspiracies and the paranormal. Whether it be incredible stories like the survival of Julianne Kepka, the sole survivor of Lanza Flight 508, which broke up over the Amazon rainforest in northern Peru in 1971, with her trekking for days to find salvation and civilization, or the ordeal and survival of passengers of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, many of whom were rugby teammates who survived in the frigid Andes Mountains for months before a couple of them found civilization and alerted everyone that there were a few survivors who were eventually saved. Or the legendary stories of planes vanishing in the Bermuda Triangle, all the way to fictional tales of plane mysteries like in the television shows Lost or Twilight Zone. Incredibly, we see aviation mysteries to this very day. For example, the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 in 2014. Still not found all this time later. So plane crashes and disappearances have indeed always existed in these realms of great mysteries and intrigue. But perhaps the most Easter eggy of all references can be found at the very top of the board, along the highest board edges. On the left-hand side, we see this, what appears to be some kind of sea creature or monster, a clear reference to both the Loch Ness Monster, a legendary creature sighted in a small lake in far northern Scotland, or the in Mario universe creature Dory from the Hazy Maze Cave in Super Mario 64, or the Dory Dip minigame in Mario Party 3, and many other future appearances on future consoles. It's a cool crossover and quite a well-hidden thing that few would have seen while playing this game, unless you were looking for it. And in the top right of the board, we see a hidden, faded, foggy-covered render of what appears to be Peach's castle. Could such a thing really have fallen into disrepair in this world? Is Mystery Land in some kind of alternate universe of the Mushroom Kingdom? Is this a replica or mirage of Peach's castle? Whatever the case may be, one can only ponder and marvel at all the remarkable references, mysteries, and details hidden within the peripheries of this wonderful Mario Party 2 board, Mystery Land. What's up with this one random golf hole, though? That's just strange and funny. I don't really know of any insane mysteries when it comes to golf. At least not as it pertains to a sort of paranormal, conspiratorial setting. Horrorland also has some cool features, especially as the board works in these day-night cycles every 2 turns. In the daytime, if we go all the way to the bottom of the board, we can see this long road leading up to the cemetery in which the board is set. I know a lot of people apparently have never noticed this or looked down here, which is interesting. But at night, it gets even more interesting as we see this massive lineup of ghosts waiting to get in and explore the area, causing many spooks and other mayhem on the board. You don't really see this while playing unless you go into the board view and specifically look around for it, which is the kind of thing I did when playing this game in my youth, but I understand many others didn't. At night, we also see rats or mice feasting on this red splatter of ketchup, a clever workaround for Nintendo adding in something like this in a family-friendly game. Many of the aspects of the board come to life at night, even those you never interact with. Interestingly, the mansion at the top of the board, which you can interact with to pass the day-night cycle again, is hosted by Kamek, one of his very few appearances on the Nintendo 64 console before he would go on to become a staple character in the Mario franchise over the coming decades. Anyways, I'll leave the board details at that. What's your favorite board detail in Mario Party 2? Or any of the first 3 Mario Parties? I'd love to read a comment going to something I might have overlooked. Well, my friends, there were some facts, knowledge, and lore about Mario Party 2 that I hope you never knew before, maybe you certainly didn't need to know, and hopefully was a little bit obscure or useless for your liking. Thank you all for watching, and a huge thanks to the Patreon supporters and channel members for your support of my work here. Stay true, my friends, and I will see you in the next stream or video.